Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shiji Buzz. Today, we discuss how to earn staff buy-in and engagement early on in the technology planning process. When hotels plan for new technology, the guest experience is always a top priority, but the employee experience is often neglected until it's time for training. But by then, it may be too late to prevent issues and ensure successful deployment. To explore this topic, we're thrilled to have with us three hospitality experts who have a lot of experience in this area. A warm welcome to Sarah Cox, Director, Operational Services, Food and Beverage and Spa at Hyatt Hotels. Sarah.
Hello, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. We have Patty DeGruder, VP of Revenue and Sales at Circle Collection. Patty.
Good afternoon, Danielle.
Thanks for joining us, Patty. And finally, Jay Sherman, Director of Global Pre-Sales at Shiji. Jay.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks. Nice to be here.
Great to have all of you. And I'm Daniel Craig. I'm the founder of Renown, and I'll be moderating today's panel on behalf of Shiji. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so feel free to send in your questions at any time, and all attendees will receive an email link to the recording of this episode within the next few days. So now let's jump into our topic. And Patty, I want to start with you. Recently, you were heavily involved in the installation of a new PMS at your properties. From your experience, what are the risks of not involving the team in technology decisions?
Yeah, thank you for kicking it off, Daniel. Yeah, the risk of not involving the team in technology decisions is that you might lose connection with them. In the end, the people are your assets. They need to work with the system. They are going to make the change between, or the difference between what people see, how they experience things. And the more people you have, or the more staff members, team members you have on board with the system, the better they will use it, and the better the service in the end for the guests will be.
Okay, and so were you successful with your last project in getting employee engagement?
Yeah, 100%. Everyone was really happy with the new system. They saw the pros, the cons, still the challenges. Where can we still grow? But we're also showing them like what is the roadmap, what does the system is meant to be doing at the end. But everyone was really, really surprised and happy to work with the new system.
Okay, excellent. Good to hear. Jay, according to Shiji's latest guest experience benchmark, an average of 68% of comments about technology in guest reviews are negative. How can the guest experience be affected when there's a lack of employee buy-in?
Yeah, that's a great point, Daniel. And unfortunately, negative reviews tend to happen much more than positive reviews. It's much better to tell a negative story. When you don't have employee buy-in with new technology, the employees will look at it as an enemy, something to work against if they don't feel that it is the right solution, often leading to unnecessary downtime with the system. And even worse, using it as an excuse with their guests. Oh, this new point of sale system can't let me do that. I'm sorry. Or, oh, the system's not working right now. Those kind of excuses, because with employee buy-in, they feel like they have part ownership of it. That's the idea of buy-in. So then when it's something that they feel empowered and part of, they're going to embrace it more. They're going to support it. They're going to use it. And to a certain extent, they're going to protect it from any kind of negative reviews. So there's multiple sides of it that get employees not taking full advantage of the system, or employees actively working against the system.
So you're really talking about ownership of the situation. When they're more involved, they have more ownership in the technology. And when things go wrong, they're more inclined to fix them and ensure that doesn't spread to the negative guest experiences. Okay. Sarah, you and your team have overseen hundreds of technology installations at Hyatt properties. In your experience, what are the unique challenges at the hotel group or the enterprise level?
Yeah, thank you. So the first challenge that comes to mind is probably system selection. When we're searching to fill a gap or a need for our F&B teams, there's many different outlets that we need to consider. So we have select service, we have markets, limited staffing, and then we also have our full service hotels with multiple outlets. So finding a solution that can scale for features, function, and pricing is essential. So when implementing a new system and solution, we must also complete this at scale. So we have a limited impact on our properties. There's several different parts to the implementation that I like to consider, but I'm going to highlight three. The first one being communication, and communicating clearly and often on the project. What are the outcomes and what are the benefits to all our hotel stakeholders? Also leveraging other leadership to gain buy-in at the property level. Second, to build a training program that is targeted the hotel's needs. So we have smaller hotels that are select service, and removing unneeded features is helpful to them. We also have full service hotels where the training needs to be robust. We also look at our training and we decide, well, what is really needed for day one? What is really needed for day 30 as an example? And what does ongoing training look like? And then third, and finally, there is support. So our goal at Hyatt is to have a combination of support within Hyatt and then support from the vendor. So we really define that based on the product that we're installing. And then also, of course, sharing that out to our properties in a very clear roadmap so they can avoid frustration when they're looking for that needed support.
Okay. And earlier when we spoke, you mentioned that your team is responsible for three key areas. I think you said product, deployment, and adoption. And I think these are three really key areas when it comes to tech deployment. If you broke them down into the main categories, could you talk a little bit about those verticals?
Yeah, absolutely. So under my team, again, we have three verticals, and it really follows the life cycle of the product. So we have the product vertical. They are the first stop. They are new products. They are existing products that either need to attention or need to be maintained. The next is deployment. So what we try to do is have our properties focus on the guest. And in order to do that, we try to take some of the workload we can off of them. And while we're deploying a new product, we use our deployment teams to take that work off and offload it to the corporate office to allow them to focus on the guests. Lastly, we have adoption. And they have many different hats that they wear. The first one being case or ticket escalation. So if there is an issue, our properties have a team that they can go to support them in escalating that item. And also they have visibility into all our products. And we ask that team to also see what products are being used and what products are not being used. So we can make an intelligent decision on, is this a product that's no longer beneficial to Hyatt and to our properties?
Okay, well, Patty, that brings me to you at Circle Collection. You're in quite a bit of a different situation. Fairly small group, 12 properties. Is that correct?
14, yes.
14, sorry.
Yeah,
14
that's
property.
Okay. Yeah, it's still counting, opening a lot.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. We'll check back what it'll be next week. Do you tell us a little bit about how Circle Collection includes staff and tech planning and installation?
Yeah. Of course, there's a huge difference between how Hyatt and Sarah, her team, is dealing with this. If you compare it to us, because yeah, we're so much smaller. We really need our teams to be more helpful, more hands-on. We're talking about operations teams, but also the teams who are doing the implementations from the sales side, revenue, reservations, applications, front offices. Everyone is part of a task force in the end to make this as a success. And this is also why we are having the staff quite early in the process involved. And first we have the stakeholders from all the departments who need to do the configuration on the back end. But at quite an early stage, when we're literally looking at the pre-opening stage, and then I'm talking about the system opening and the migration, we're getting people from the hotels involved as well. So operations side, front office team members, reservations, and we're getting them in the task force teams to get them familiar with the system. What decisions did we make? Why did we make those decisions? Show them the system, get familiar with it. And in the end, when the migration has been done, they can live and breathe the system. They can help their peers. And in that way, we want to make sure that they are embracing the system.
Okay, so you mentioned that you set up a task force in the beginning involving employees from the main departments that are affected by the technology. That sounds like a pretty big investment in time and resources.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I really feel that it is important to do so because we're so small in a way, and we're still opening new properties. We have a huge commitment of those persons attending the task forces, and that drive what comes. We've seen it in Vienna 2 weeks ago, also with the Shiji team. The drive of those people in that room who is doing the integration and the connection with the hotel team, knowing that they can always ask us how to move forward, and that they really feel that we are one team. Doesn't matter if you're in operations, in doing the integration, the migration, or you're part of the CG team, that everyone is there to help each other to get this sorted. And that you feel going through the whole process, but also in the months afterwards, because you have such an intense connection and you build that relationship. People still know where to go, to whom to go when they have questions. And that, I think that enthusiasm also works in the hotel during the next couple of months, having new people on board and train them as well.
So that investment pays off in the long term.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Because I think often hotels will budget when they're budgeting for new technology. They budget for the technology, they budget for staffing, training, but don't always consider that you're pulling, if you have a task force, a committee, you're pulling staff away from their day-to-day jobs as part of that planning process that leading up to training. Okay, Jay, now you have over 2 decades of experience in hospitality technology, first with Micros and then Oracle and now Shiji. From your experience, how can hotels minimize the disruptiveness of tech deployment for teams?
Yeah, far too many years of experience, to be honest. But the reality of it is, I think it comes down to really 2 key points that have already even been discussed today. I think the first and most important is communication, and that is communication up and down, not just the upper executives telling the line staff, this is what's going to happen, but the upper executives listening to the line staff about what their needs are and what their operational reality is. And going along with that communication is that idea of understanding for both of them, to have that understanding of what the other side is saying, all different departments to be involved in that process. Having that involvement in the process, and interesting, you talk about the years of experience. An interesting experience I had many years ago doing an implementation process for a restaurant group that had over 30 restaurants around North America. They were rolling out to all of their locations, and it was a scheduled routine rollout. What they did that I found interesting was they took the assistant general manager from the following restaurant and had them go and shadow the restaurant before them. So they would go for that entire process to the implementation experience before them, watching that, experiencing it, doing all of that on site right there in the middle of it. And they could be assistants as well. But then when they went back to their home restaurant, they had the opportunity to explain what they've seen. They were able to see if this correct training doesn't happen, if this does or does not happen, all of those details, and bring ideas on how to improve it. So that way, that snowball effect of communication and understanding continued. By the time you start getting to properties 4, 5, and 6, at that point, everyone has that understanding, that buy-in, that experience continues to grow. And I think that's really important. And while implementation is not always going to be a major rollout, I think it is about having that understanding also of just the past and other experiences. You may not get the chance to go to a project before yours, but there are people within your company you can talk to who've done something similar, communicating with them, finding out who was the key stakeholder involved in managing that. And that's going to help you be better prepared.
Yeah, because of course it's a huge advantage for hotel groups to be able to install in one hotel, test it out, fine tune all the issues. Is that an approach that you took, Patty, with your group?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, the
Yeah, so you
same.
started with one property. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
you
common.
always feel that you need to bring a certain team with you to have the experience, and also some team members who did it before, like front office manager, for all the processes to get the new team quickly up and running and understanding why you're doing certain things, what the system has to deliver, and to take it from there.
Hmm. And I guess within independent properties who don't have that luxury, as you said, Jay, that they can speak to other hoteliers who have gone through a similar process. And I think that's really where you rely on your tech partner, who does have a ton of experience in these installations and can help you work out some of the kinks in advance. Do you think, Jay, do you think that it's inevitable that installation of big technology like a PMS or POS is going to be pure chaos at some point, or can you actually avoid that?
Ideally it won't be. And that's where you say as well, working with your vendor, your partner who's been through that and helping listen to what experience they have will make a difference. Ideally, if you get the chance to listen to this Shiji Buzz and start listening to what you need to do to minimize that disruption, that makes all of the difference as well. Any kind of change, no matter how well planned, you have to be prepared for chaos. Whether it happens or not, you do have to be prepared for it as best you can.
This is a great question for you, Sarah, having really done thousands of installations with your team. Is it always chaos, or can it actually be a smooth transition?
I do think it can be smooth. There's always bumps in the road. We resolve a lot of those bumps, and I know we've talked about this is through piloting and not being scared to change quickly as you pilot and making changes to that project plan. Um, I think that's really the key element that will make those future implementations much easier down the road.
I can remember working as a front desk agent. I won't tell you how long ago that was, but we implemented a new PMS, and I was a part-timer. I was a university student, and I missed all the training. And I came in one Friday afternoon, and it was chaos. Huge. It was a 1,000-room hotel. Anyway, the front office manager gave me a 5-minute tutorial on how to use the new PMS and then sent me out there to check in guests. And I just sort of learned on the fly. So not the ideal situation, but we worked through it. Now, Sarah, staying with you for a moment, I think you said that you've overseen over 200 installations of the Shiji Infosys POS alone. What new features do modern POSs offer that make life easier for employees?
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a few of them that are coming up and we're seeing more of. So when I look at and think about new features within a new POS, I think about them being built in, but also the integrations that are allowed with the POS as well. So some of these features, number one, mobile ordering. So that's allowing a guest to place an order, take payment, view the menu from a QR code or a link. And this could be a delivery to the room. It could be a delivery to a location in the hotel, such as a pool or a lobby area. It could be picking up a meal from a market, and also it could be table ordering as well. Second, POS integrations with delivery services. So we're seeing more tools where as you order from delivery services such as Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, that is transmitting directly into your POS solution. Third, kiosks. So kiosks, especially in a market scenario, we're seeing more and more of. And these would be two types of experiences. A market scenario where you have an item that's being scanned and then you pay. Or let's say you have a cafe within your market as well, and you're doing an order and then you pay from that device and picking up. Also, what we're seeing a lot from our operations team and what they're asking of us is to find a handheld device. So this would be a handheld device, not so much a tablet. They want to get rid of or want to walk away from more of those bulky tablet technology, but something they can hold in their hand. The staff can use that to order, to take payment, and in some scenarios, even print the check. And then lastly, I'll mention a QR code for payment as well. So the customer using their own mobile device can scan that QR code, add a tip, and make payment and close their check automatically. So when I look at all those, I think about some benefits. There's a reduction in labor costs. There's reduced order errors. There's reduced customer wait times. There's improved productivity. And then speaking specifically of mobile ordering and kiosks, we actually have found that this increases the average check as well.
Interesting. I do want to explore that a little bit more in terms of employees' technical skills using new technology. But first, Patty, staffing shortages, continued issue in the hotel industry. It's been going on for a couple years. Can technology help to improve staff retention?
Yeah, definitely think so. Because what I think will happen is that the more you have automated your systems or your procedures, and the more your staff members can focus on other things. And I also feel that the least least popular things they need to do, like the administrative task, can be done by automation. And also if the systems are very intuitive, so I think a lot of people really also enjoy it. It's not like a new technology they need to learn, because a lot of people, for them, it's their way of living. And we're in a service area, or service industry, I don't feel that our jobs are going to be replaced by automation to the fullest. So I think it only can make the lives and the jobs for every staff member so much more fun, rather than being scared of technology or automation.
Sure. Have you found with your approach to engaging staff early on in the planning process that they seem to be more engaged and happier at work and more in control of their work life, and that would ultimately lead to higher retention, I think?
Yeah, for sure. Because the more people embrace the system and they understand why certain decisions are made, or if they had like their own input into the system, what they feel is really important, or that they can see that the impact or the things they raised really have been evaluated, and you see the system developing, you see things coming back into the system you thought was an issue, or you thought it would be beneficial for your own job. I think that will give everyone a boost. So definitely also the team members who are working with the systems. And I think you can secure them and also trigger them to say, okay, hey guys, what do you think can be automated? What do you think the system can do so you don't need to do it yourself? Do you have any task you might not like to the fullest, which you really feel that can be automated or taken over by a system? And also, I think the amount of the less manual stuff you need to do as a person, the less mistakes can be done, can be made, which will also lead to less work stress, I would say. And I think that the team members also value that.
Absolutely. Now, Jay, Sarah was talking about some of the new features and technology that make life easier for staff members. And as we're seeing, especially since the pandemic, technology is becoming more and more a part of the everyday life of employees, regardless of what department that you're in. So, would you say that technical skills have become more important than service skills for frontline positions?
The short answer to that, I would say, is no. It hasn't become more important. To flesh that out a bit more, one, as you said, technology is becoming much more a part of everyday life. We can't get away at this point. To live in a modern society, you need to have technical skills. You need to understand how to use a touchscreen, how to use that interface, that kind of experience. So that's just a part of living in, like I said, the modern life. But it does ultimately come down to the service skills are what makes a difference. Anyone can type into a computer and get information, but to have that delivered in a way makes all the difference that someone who with those service skills does. That's really part of the key. And I think it's also about embracing the technology. And I think what is key in any job, but especially in hospitality, is embracing that use of technology and not fighting against it. And as Patty had said, finding ways to use it that can help improve the situation. I often like to talk about historically a restaurant could have a fantastic maitre d', and this is someone who can remember every detail about every guest who comes in. Mr. Craig, it's great to see you again. Will you be having that same bottle of wine you tried last time? Those kind of details. The reality is those are hard people to find. But now with technology, that's something that we can provide that allows the staff members to have that same level of detail. As a guest is coming in, knowing all of that information about the guest. Now, when they're checking out, being able to say to them at the front desk, oh, I see you have an upcoming reservation at XYZ Hotel. They have a fantastic pool there. No, you don't remember every detail about every hotel in the portfolio, but you're fed that information to take that service level to that next level. And I think that's going to be the key, is not so much your technical skills, but your ability to integrate them into the service you provide.
So, as technology becomes so user-friendly that you don't even have to interview staff members for technical skills, especially young ones, you're assuming they can run their iPhone, they can run the PMS. Patty, when you hire for reservations agents, how much attention do you pay on to technical skills, or do you just assume they have them?
Not that much.
Mhm.
Like last week, I had to open a position for reservations in London, and then the recruitment person asked me like, "Yeah, shall I scan their technical skills, their PMS skills?" And I was like, "Don't bother. It's not of any use because the systems are very intuitive. Even if you have 20 years of experience, some systems you don't need to remember everything. It's not like you need to know all the shortcuts and everything to do your job. You can train people on that. So we rather hire on attitude to see how their service level is, how they interact with the guests, because and especially as you mentioned before, like the younger generation, they were born with an iPhone. They know how to work with computers, how they know with systems how to work with it. And on the other hand, the systems are very intuitive. So even people who are less tech savvy, they can still deal with new systems coming up. And yeah, so for us, it's more like the click you have with a person. Um, and of course, you talk about technology a little bit, but it's not the most important thing anymore to double check before hiring.
I do hope that employees appreciate how much easier these systems have gotten for staff. Those of us who've been around for a while can remember how much more difficult it used to operate technology, and being on the front desk and having a huge line in front of you and trying to block and unblock a room and go through all these different procedures. Um, it makes me sometimes wonder, though, when technology is so much more user friendly and efficient, why are there still lines at the front desk? But that's for a whole other webinar. I do want to go back to Sarah with another question. Before I do that, just a reminder, we're going to go into our Q&A session next. If you have any questions for our panelists, this is a great opportunity to ask them. We have a ton of experience here today. Please send in your questions via the Q&A form on the screen. Sarah, so one of the biggest risks with big technology is that after all the time and resources invested, it's not used to its fullest capabilities by staff. So how do hotels ensure that staff use technology to its fullest capabilities?
Yeah, I would say this is a question that probably keeps me up at night. So there's a couple of techniques within the product lifestyle that support team engagement. The first one I would say is probably to allow the team to have a hands-on experience. And I'm speaking of solutions which are customer facing. So this would be mobile ordering, QR code payment, kiosks that I mentioned earlier. This would be including the team within the testing process so they can see and feel what how the guest would engage with that product. That way, if the guest is having problems or they're engaging with it, they can better speak to the customer. Number two, share KPIs, data, and targets. So use these KPIs that are actionable and that are defined and agreed upon on the outcomes of the solution. Third, we must provide an opportunity for structured team feedback as well. This allows the team to understand what is the perceived roadblock to using that new technology. Fourth, I would say that our customers are pretty savvy as well. So as a review through the customer surveys or the guest surveys, our internal teams can often derive ideas from what is shared within there. And then number five, we find, and this is more so within the F&B, that continued review of system configuration and SOPs is critical to make sure that POS system remains optimized. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, our goals are to provide our teams with training that can be accessed easily and consumed quickly.
Okay, there's some great content there. A reminder to listeners that you will get a copy of the recording to watch on demand if you missed some of that stuff. There'd be a great little checklist there for tech deployment. And also, Shiji is working on a white paper on this very topic, and we'll include some of the content covered in today's webinar in the white paper. So stay tuned for that, which will be out in October. Now let's go to the Q&A. Feel free to send in your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can. Excuse me, I just had an appearance from, it's actually not my cat, it's the neighborhood cat, the neighbor's cat. Thought she was locked away. But question I have is, one of the obstacles to technology is fear from staff that they'll be replaced by automation. We touched on this a little bit, but how can hoteliers reassure employees when this isn't actually the case? Patty, can we start with you?
Yeah, that's fine. I think it has also to do like the sooner you have your team members in the system, in the task force, and making them part of the systems you're using, and decision making on why are we using certain systems, what can we do to make your life easier, to make you happier as a person. I think everyone would love to get that question and to be able to deliver some input on it. So I think you can take away a little bit of that fear by talking to them. Just show them, hey, listen, this is what we are going to do to make your life easier. This is what we do to get things automated. And this is what you're going to do with the time you save to be able to spend to yeah, maybe not the brightest moment to say now, but upsetting to our guests. But yeah, I think those kinds of service deliveries, I think that is really important for them to show like, okay, this is what we take away from you, and this is what you can do in return, and to keep an open conversation about it.
Jay, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what Patty said is spot on. I may think another key point as well is reminding the staff of their own value, of their worth. There's a reason that they have been hired. Now, there are some roles that feasibly could be replaced by automation. That is a fact of life more easily than others. But there are many roles that are not ready for that replacement. In hospitality, there are probably more roles than expected that aren't going to get replaced. And you can even talk to the staff about historically. I mean, in the food and beverage scope of things, people expected since the 50s and 60s that there'd be completely automated kitchens. And even to this day, there are not automated kitchens. There are still staff working in the kitchens. There's a lot of technology to help them. There's timers, there's these kind of things, but it still takes someone there to assist with that. Bartenders, waiters, all of these roles are still crucial to that guest experience because guests are looking for that human experience. And that's really the important thing. And to highlight for them how this is benefiting them. That's going to be the other thing as well. They can start to see what are those advantages that allow them to do that. A point of sale system is going to allow them not to have to run to the kitchen and hand in a ticket every time so they can stay in front of the guests. Just little things. There's always going to be an advantage.
How about you, Sarah? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So it's to echo what was said, it's not about replacing, it's about using the staff differently. So I think about a kiosk in a market. That's not necessarily replacing anybody's work. Maybe the kiosk is there to bridge a gap. That person that's racing to a meeting and they see a long line, they may go to the kiosk instead to order their coffee. So it's just using staff differently. And then maybe it's a scenario where now you can take that staff that would be, in the example of a kiosk, checking guests out. They would be focused on providing barista services in the cafe, as an example.
Okay, thank you all. We do have a question from an attendee, a little bit off topic, but what kind of integrations are the most important when looking for a new technology provider? Who wants to take a stab at answering that question?
I think I could start with that. I think the interesting thing about that question is there's a lot of different routes you could go. What kind of integrations are most important? It depends on what's most important to that hospitality provider, that hotel or that restaurant. And with a new technology provider, what technology are they working with? Is it a point of sale, a PMS, a booking system, any of those details? And I think the important part, without knowing more of those facts, I think the important part is how open to integrations is the technology provider. I think the real key is finding that provider who's going to work with any kind of a system, have an open solution, and a willingness to work with anyone, even if it competes with their own solutions. And I think that's what's important, because the what I like to look at with an open API or something like that is it really is it's a roadmap for the road that hasn't been built yet. You can sit in the beginning and go through every question about every system you can imagine, but you can't predict what's coming next. No one expected digital ordering to take off as much as it did until there was a pandemic and everyone was locked in their houses. No one expected that. And now that's one of the most important parts of a system. So I think having a technology provider who is open and capable to connect to anything, that's the most important integration.
And I think that ties in with cloud integration as well. It's just it seems to be an inevitable shift that all the technology is going to the cloud. Sarah, how does the cloud, how does that affect implementation of big tech like a POS or PMS?
Yeah, it's actually been really interesting. We've seen when it comes to implementation of POS solutions, that there has been a movement of POS vendors simplifying the POS implementation. And what I mean by that is more so vendors are saying, we are going to ship you a box. It's going to have a workstation in it. It's going to have everything that you need. and anyone can set that up. So anybody with minimal IT experience or even no IT experience can set that up, and it would work very similar to setting up your phone. You're hitting next a lot. They're prompting you through it, and they can do that because they've done that pre-work and that setup. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, self-guided training. That is key in a lot of these deployments now. And all that with the goal of reducing or eliminating on-site employees from those vendors setting that up.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Time for one last question. I'm going to ask each of you to share, kind of summarize things a little bit. What would be your top 3 recommendations for getting employees more engaged in technology planning and deployment? Can we start with you, Patty?
I was hoping that was the last one you would ask. Top 3. Sorry, can I ask somebody else?
Here, let me think about it for a sec.
Sorry.
Top 3 things to consider or recommendations if you want to get employees more involved in technology planning. Jay, I'm sure you've got a ready answer for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think getting the employees involved in the tech planning, because you were asking about the top 3 ideas for getting the employees involved in that. One is that openness and listening to what they say. One thing that has surprised me is technology is everywhere, and sometimes you wonder why it is where you see it. And the reason, what I say there is, you start looking at, NFL football matches or Bundesliga soccer matches, and you see advertising from AWS and these other technology providers, and you wonder why are they advertising to a large stadium of people? And the reason is because those ideas can come from anywhere. So you start being willing and open to listen to what staff say. So when a staff member says, hey, do we have it? I heard so much about this AI technology. Do we have anything that can, help suggest a room upgrade or, a add-on for a food or something like that? And listen to that and open up that ideas for them. That, again, as I said before, the communication and being willing to listen to their ideas, I think that makes a big difference. And getting them involved in any technology conversations or discussions, whether it's discussing current systems or plans for new systems.
Okay, Sarah, what would your top 3 considerations be?
Hands down, communicate often and to the right stakeholders so they can support the project and understand the project. Getting teams involved. So we have often what we'll do is we'll build requirements for a new system, and we'll involve teams from every level to participate. It's a good stretch exercise for a lot of those teams, but also they have an opportunity to share what their needs are. And then also, as we evaluate the vendors, we can stack those vendors up against those requirements and share that back to those that have participated so they can see the response. It gives them a little bit more buy-in to the selection process. And then lastly, piloting, testing, and then learning.
Okay, excellent. Thank you both. And let's go back to Patty. Are you ready for us now?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, for us, I think it's very important to have indeed the impressions from the key team working with the systems to get commitment, to get them enthusiastic about the system so they can spearhead it to their peers. And also the decision making in the process, like who makes the decisions, to have that very, very clear. And then indeed the rollout, and as Sarah mentioned, is of course like phase and everything.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much to all of you. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. And stay tuned for the next white paper from Shiji. As I mentioned, it's on this very topic, how to involve employees in tech planning, coming out next month. A big thanks to our panelists for sharing your expertise today. Sarah Cox of Hyatt Hotels. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Patty DeGruder of Circle Collection. Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome.
And Jay Sherman of Shiji. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Daniel.
And a special thank you to my neighbor's cat, Mango, for making a special appearance today. A reminder that all listeners will receive a link to this recording, and you will find all episodes of the Shiji Buzz in the Knowledge Hub at shijigroup.com. I'm Daniel Craig of Renown on behalf of Shiji. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. We'll see you again at the next episode of the Shiji Buzz.